She never asked for the spotlight. Not when she was growing up in a modest home in Elkhart, Indiana. Not when her fingers first brushed the strings of a borrowed guitar. And certainly not when her voice, aching, untrained, unmistakably hers, poured out into a small-town talent show and shifted the course of her life. Long before sold-out stages and Hall of Fame honors, she was just Connie, a daughter shaped by stern discipline, faith-filled days, and the hush of country radio in the background. The dream wasn't fame. It was family. A home of her own. A life rooted in something steady. But the music wouldn't stay quiet. And in the quiet moments, it kept calling. When the industry came knocking, it wasn't glitter or glamour that answered. It was honesty. A voice that didn't need polish to feel like truth. That kind of sound doesn't fade. It only deepens. And even now, decades later, that truth still lives. Far from flashing lights, tucked into handwritten lyrics and gospel refrains. She's 83 now. And she's still singing, though not always into a microphone. The stage is smaller. Sometimes no more than her living room. The applause is softer. Shared laughter, warm meals, the rustle of prayer pages turning. The woman once hailed as country music's queen never chased the crown. She held it lightly, then laid it down when the cost grew too heavy. There's a kind of peace that follows a long road walked with purpose. A legacy built not from reinvention, but from constancy. Through industry shifts, personal sacrifice, and the burden of expectations, she never let go of what mattered. Faith. Family. The steady rhythm of Southern soil and soul. In the quiet edges of the spotlight, she found something lasting. And in that stillness, her story unfolds, not loud, but lasting. She didn't rise through glitz or glamour. She climbed quietly, on the strength of a voice that didn't ask for attention. It commanded it. When Connie Smith picked up that guitar as a teenager, it wasn't for an audience. It was for herself. A way to speak in the silence of a strict home and modest upbringing. The melodies came from somewhere deeper, shaped by faith, hardship, and the longing for a different kind of life. In Columbus, Ohio, that longing turned into lightning. A talent contest, a chance performance, and a listener who heard something rare. Bill Anderson, a name already known, but now forever linked to what followed. He opened the door, but Connie was the one who walked through it. Her first recording, Once a Day, didn't just succeed, it shattered every expectation. 8 weeks at #1. No other female country artist had done that. In that moment, she wasn't just a housewife from Ohio anymore. She was a star. But even with the headlines, the spotlight, the offers, she never drifted from where she came from. As the industry turned faster, Connie moved slower. Even at her peak, she held something back. Not out of reluctance, but out of principle. Where others chased pop crossovers, she reached deeper into tradition. Steel guitars, honest lyrics, and a delivery that never asked for permission. By 1965, she stood among the Grand Ole Opry greats, but off stage, her world remained unchanged. She returned home after every performance. She kept her Bible nearby. She sang not to be seen, but because the music still felt like prayer. In an era when women in country were expected to mold themselves to market trends, she stood still, and stood firm. Her voice earned her comparisons to George Jones. Dolly Parton named her among the 3 truest female singers of all time. But the acclaim didn't pull her away. If anything, it reminded her to stay grounded. Each top 10 hit, each award, only confirmed what she already knew. Real success didn't live in the charts. It lived in doing things the right way. Her way. But the cost of authenticity was high. The pace was brutal. Album after album, tour after tour. As a single mother, the balance was never easy. Fatigue settled in, not just in the body but in the soul. That's when she turned more deeply to gospel. It wasn't a business decision. It was a lifeline. Redemptive songs gave her space to breathe. She began saying no. No to deals that clashed with her beliefs. No to demands that stole time from her children. There was pushback. Critics questioned her choices. But she held her ground. In 1971, she slowed everything down. A new marriage. A new rhythm. She stepped back not because she had to, but because she chose to. Then in 1974, she did what few would dare. She left RCA. At the height of her fame, she walked away from the label that had launched her. It was bold. Some said it was foolish. But it gave her freedom. A chance to make faith-driven music on her terms. That decision shaped everything that followed. Her career shifted. Less commercial, more intentional. She changed labels. Took long pauses. Focused on her 5 children. Some believed she was fading. But Connie was never disappearing. She was reclaiming. In 1997, the story turned again. A self-titled album, produced by Marty Stuart, brought her voice back into the spotlight. It wasn't loud. It was measured, thoughtful, restrained. And it reminded everyone of what had been there all along. Later that year, she and Marty married. A new chapter, grounded in shared purpose. Together, they protected the roots of country music. They didn't chase the trends, they anchored the genre. The albums they made, especially 2011's Long Line of Heartaches, stood as quiet declarations. Country could still mean something. And Connie could still carry it, with grace, with grit, with the same voice that once stunned the world, and never stopped telling the truth. The turning point wasn't loud, but it echoed. By the mid-1970s, Connie Smith was no longer chasing anything. Not the charts, not approval, not even the version of success others thought she should hold on to. Leaving RCA wasn't just a label change, it was a quiet act of defiance. She walked away from the engine that had powered her rise and stepped into uncertainty. The commercial peak was behind her, but ahead lay something harder to define. Freedom. Space. Conviction. And with it came longer pauses between albums, deliberate silences that some mistook for decline. But Connie wasn't retreating. She was building something quieter, more private, more rooted. There were 5 children who needed her, and she didn't split the difference between motherhood and music. She gave them her time. Not occasionally but fully. And with every break she took, the industry moved on. Yet her voice remained, even when few were listening. It stayed, still as ever, waiting for the right moment to speak again. Her journey was no longer measured in chart positions. It was measured in peace. As others adjusted to the shifting demands of fame, Connie shaped her life around her beliefs. She turned down songs that didn't align. She refused appearances that cost more than they gave. The decisions weren't made in boardrooms. They were made around kitchen tables and in quiet prayer. There was criticism. Some couldn't understand how an artist so gifted would walk away from the spotlight. But she never walked away. She simply chose a different kind of stage. One lined with pews instead of flashing lights. One built around values instead of contracts. As the years passed, she released music when it felt right. Some records were overlooked, but they were never hollow. Each carried intention, not obligation. And then, after years in the background, came a return, quiet but profound. The 1997 album reminded critics of what she could still do. Not louder, not trendier, just purer. And beside her stood someone who didn't want to change her, but to honor her. Marty Stuart saw in Connie what she had protected all along. Not just a voice but a vision. Their relationship, built slowly, wasn't about the industry. It was about understanding. About respect. About shared roots in something deeper than music. When they married, it wasn't a comeback. It was a convergence. 2 lives folding into one rhythm, one purpose. Together, they didn't chase the modern country sound. They held the line. They performed at the Opry with reverence, not routine. They recorded albums that didn't apologize for tradition. 2011's Long Line of Heartaches didn't aim for radio dominance. It spoke to those who remembered, and those who wanted to feel something real again. Their home life mirrored their art. Simple, steady, sacred. Connie was no longer navigating alone. She had a partner who shared the burden and the beauty of legacy. The connection brought clarity. And through it, she returned, not to the fast lanes of fame, but to a steadier, deeper current. By the time she reached her 80s, Connie had no need to prove anything. Yet her presence still mattered. Her voice, still unmistakably hers, carried the same ache, the same strength, only softer now, more seasoned, more restrained. She sang sparingly, but when she did, the room still fell silent. In 2021, the cry of the heart whispered that her story wasn't finished. It wasn't nostalgia. It was continuation. Not everything she built was visible. The real work lived in her home outside Nashville. Not sprawling, not ostentatious, just warm. Filled with handwritten lyrics, worn hymnals, and the aroma of cornbread and coffee. Her days were now quieter. Gardening, walking with Marty, writing notes to her grandchildren, singing sometimes when the spirit moved her. And in those quiet hours, the richness of her life became clearer. The fame faded. The spotlight dimmed. But her truth stayed lit, unshaken, unwavering. A long road, still unfolding in the smallest, most sacred ways. Connie Smith's final chapters aren't marked by encore tours or farewell albums. They unfold slowly, with quiet weight, in the steady rhythm of a life reclaimed. She remains close to the Grand Ole Opry, but not bound by its demands. Her performances are rare, intentional, each one more like a conversation than a concert. The voice is still there, aged, but undiminished. It settles into the silence, fills it gently, then fades just as softly. Her home outside Nashville holds no trophies on display, no spotlight fixtures, only photographs, handwritten lyrics, well-worn hymnals, and the comfort of simple things. She tends to her garden, bakes in the afternoon, shares long walks with Marty. Music still lives there, not because it must, but because it belongs. In the quiet, it breathes. There's no need to announce herself. Her presence is enough. The fame she once stepped away from never truly left. It just found a different place to rest. A softer glow, still warm, still constant. One built on truth. She has become a figure of calm, a presence that soothes rather than stirs. For guests, the door is always open. The kitchen always warm. The atmosphere always unhurried. There are no schedules pinned to the fridge, no itinerary beyond what matters. Her life now moves with the sun. Gentle mornings, thoughtful afternoons, evenings spent in prayer or song. She writes letters by hand. She plays the piano when words won't do. And through it all, there is no sense of retreat. Only purpose. She watches her grandchildren grow with quiet joy. She doesn't interfere, but she offers presence, guidance, kindness. Each note in her voice, each word she writes, carries decades of lived truth. Marty, always nearby, plays his guitar in the next room. Their laughter still echoes through the halls. The industry, for all its noise, now feels distant. But the legacy remains rooted. Not just in recordings, but in the spaces where her choices shaped lives, held fast, and never asked for applause. Her finances reflect the same balance. Practical. Unpretentious. With an estimated net worth between $8 and $12 million, Connie lives not in excess but in ease. Her wealth came from decades of touring, songwriting, and royalties. Not quick fame, not spectacle. She didn't invest in flash. She invested in comfort, in generosity, in giving without announcement. Churches, youth programs, music education. These weren't headlines. They were habits. Her car isn't extravagant. Her home isn't sprawling. But both are full of intention. She found contentment where others sought more. The steadiness of her life now mirrors the way she sang. A direct line, no detours. She doesn't owe the world anything, yet she continues to give. Through her songs. Through her silence. Through the example of someone who never compromised, even when the cost was high. Her story doesn't climax. It settles, deep and clear. A legacy that doesn't demand to be remembered, but simply refuses to be forgotten. What she built is measured in more than albums. It lives in the artists she inspired, the audiences she moved, the values she protected. Her name may not trend, but it's spoken with reverence in quiet circles where real music still matters. She never mentored for recognition, but her backstage presence, her listening ear, her quiet encouragement, they mattered. They shaped the next generation not with instruction, but with example. Once a day may be the song remembered, but the truth of Connie Smith runs far deeper. In gospel refrains. In the weight of every held note. In the decision to step back when others pushed forward. Her legacy was never built for attention. It was built to last. And it has. In every room she ever hushed. In every story she ever told. In every choice she ever made to stay true. Her voice, like her life, remains a quiet force. Steady. Rooted. Undeniable.